Costa Rica 2012. Indra is on a long-awaited vacation with her husband Sid, and they're enjoying themselves. They're on a zipline tour, and while being harnessed, the instructor casually asks Indra, "Cómo se llama?" Indra's brain freezes and she croaks out a weak, "No habla español." Back home in Boston, she's very sad that all the time that she spent learning Spanish at a community college did not really help her. She realizes that she did not do enough repetition or keep at it long enough to be able to retain the words that she learned. She has also put in the work to learn a new language. Life, 2 kids and 7 years later, these thoughts have faded away in time. She's a busy working mother who is fighting to find the time to do the things that she loves, while enjoying family and a fulfilling career. Now, an opportunity for enjoying themselves has opened up in the form of a trip to Spain a few months down the line. This time, Indra is sure that Indra wants to make sure that she does not falter when she's spoken to by the locals. She wants to be able to learn enough to teach her kids more about the country that she's visiting. Now, to do this, she needs help. And this is where Lexico, a Spanish mobile learning application, comes into the picture. We looked at Indra's story and we came up with a plan. Now, when we look at what we have to do or what we have to keep in mind as we develop a tool that caters to Indra, we realize that she's a busy and stressful or stressed out person who does not have the luxury of time. So she'll study whenever and wherever the opportunity presents itself. She's a visual person who responds well to pictures and audible methods, and she also does well in a score-oriented or game-based method of learning. She needs short-term goals so she can have some accountability, and she really needs to have conversational capability be a big part of the learning experience. So her goal is to learn Spanish to enrich her travel experiences, to be able to converse with the locals in the native lingo. So, looking at Indra's problem, our hypothesis is that by designing an app that offers Indra short and basic lessons in the form of flashcards that use pictures, audio, and lean in the conversational ability of a language will help her best in learning a new language. The additional features like the ability to chat interactively and a guide to progress will be nice to have. When we looked at this app, we decided to begin with the basics. The basic user flow was based on the flashcards themselves. The user would just go through these lesson decks and then take tests to test their knowledge. The other feature that we immediately thought of was letting the user set their own study schedule by adding on daily reminders and a study duration that would keep them on track. Basic sketches, which then led to wireframes, which led to more wireframes. And finally, it was time that we built a prototype. Now, the prototype then led to a round of usability testing, which was great in terms of getting us feedback for pain points that needed to be fixed. The result was that we found one major flaw that absolutely needed fixing, and there were few other issues which, while not high priority, would be nice to fix. So the main pain point was that the home screen or the lesson decks themselves, the presentation of these, there were these progress bars on the home screen whose intent was not very clear to the users. Was it for the decks? Was it for the tests? There were too many elements crowded on the home screen, which kind of made it difficult, again, to recognize what the idea basically is. Deck number 1, deck number 2, and deck number 3 are generic titles. They again don't give you much information about what exactly is going on. So in the new round of prototyping, we came up with images, the progress bar, and actually category names for the decks. The images function is button for the decks or the flashcards. The progress bar function as buttons for the tests, and we had explicit category names. This solved the problem of the confusion with the intent of the progress bars. We also had vocab and conversation as two separate sections with similar category names for the decks, which kind of led the users to understand that vocab to conversation was progressive in nature. The second issue, which is kind of tied to the first issue, was the test-based screens. Not enough information to give us a clear differentiation between the decks themselves and the tests. So in the new round of prototyping, tied back to the images and the progress bars, we now have enough messaging attached to the tests themselves that give you a clear indication of where you are at any point during the test. One of the other main features that we added in the app in the new round of prototyping was the addition of points when you cleared certain checkpoints, which kind of made it a little bit more fun to go through these tests. We also had similar kind of issues with the final test based screens, which basically indicated the jumping of a level. A little bit more clear messaging helped make the intent behind the tests a lot more clear. Sorry. Additional feature that we had was the ability for the user to add their own words to a vocabulary bank. Now, we didn't have enough clarity on the build screen for the user to recognize exactly what was going on. There was a level of drill down which was unnecessary on the main screen. So we split it up into just the build and the review buttons, and then had the drill down in the subsequent screen so the user could figure out what category they wanted to add a word for. We also had the flashcard itself have a few icons that were not really the most appropriate. So those were changed from a pencil icon to a bubble icon, which is a standard icon for being able to add your own comments. There were other general redesign that was done. And throughout this process, we've had some pros and cons. So the pros that we learned were that early stage usability testing is the most efficient way to make sure you're staying on the correct track. Don't be afraid to ask the interviewees to elaborate on answers. You never know what value you get from the elaboration. We paid particular attention to the navigational aspect, and we got a lot of good feedback, which helped us with the second round of prototyping. And taking detailed notes while interviewing and immediately prepping the test report can help keep one honest. On the flip side, if you don't try to keep the features basic and you aim for too much, you will be wasting time. If you record when you interview, it'll give you better access to the reactions that the interviewees had. And the prototype, though basic stage, has to have enough interactivity and information for the user to be able to give you feedback. You do not want to be feeding the user information while they're actually taking the tests. It will also be nice to understand material design and standards and practices well enough to be able to use the correct icons in appropriate places. The other thing was also that it can make a difference when you find the right tool for wireframing and prototyping. So a few things we would like to add to Lehiko after a chat with Indra. The second line of prototyping was a chat feature, a much higher fidelity prototype with animation, and enhancing the secondary features on the application. And so Indra waits for the mobile app to help make her trip to Spain memorable, and we thank you for joining us today.